We think it's worrying when the leaders of the main political parties are so out of touch with the concerns of ordinary people. We really do need to inject a dose of reality into these discussions about transgender issues before political fashion just runs away with us altogether. A particular anxiety, which is shared by a lot of people, religious people and non-religious people, is that by allowing men to self-identify as female, without even going through the motions of asking a doctor to try and verify the sincerity of their feelings, allows those men potentially to invade the privacy of women and girls. And that's a genuine concern, because, of course, where this policy of gender self-identification has been tried in the US, then you have stories of women and young girls experiencing the humiliation of finding themselves sharing toilet and changing facilities with men.
How should the government go about this issue then?
Well, we have to bear in mind that you've already got a piece of legislation on the statute books from 2004 that allows, say, a 50-year-old father of four to obtain a birth certificate claiming that he was born a girl. Now, we're not here talking about intersex conditions. We're clearly talking about transsexualism, where the person's body is entirely healthy, a fully male or fully female. Now, a lot of people have concerns about that existing legislation and indeed the implications it has for other people who are put under pressure to go along with the idea that you really can change from male to female. And of course, very many people think that that's simply impossible. So if we move over to this idea of self-identification, then you move even further away from reality. I mean, at least if you have a doctor involved in the proceedings, that person can verify the sincerity of the person's feelings. They can verify whether they really are suffering from gender dysphoria, which is a real and distressing condition where a person does feel at odds with their biological sex. So at least having that test in the legislation does introduce some external test. But the idea that we should ditch that and just allow people to self-identify, I think a lot of people, even people who perhaps agree with the transgender rights, would think that that's going too far. But this is a major issue. You know, if our politicians believe that we can redefine our own gender at will, then it's not surprising that you get other people who follow that to its logical conclusion, and they're advocating transracialism, even transageism. It's high time that we had a reality check on this and just acknowledge that whilst we sympathise with people who struggle with these conditions and we wish to befriend them, we wish to welcome them into our churches, we wish to help them in everywhere we can, the simple fact is that there are some things that can't be changed. And there are many medical conditions, mental health conditions, psychological conditions that any of us could face where we feel very much at odds with reality, very much at odds with aspects of the world around us. We mustn't belittle the experiences of those people. But at the same time, we know that the right response to those situations, the response that we ourselves would want if we were struggling with those conditions, will be for people to help us to come to terms with reality. And at the moment, there is a very rigid, very doctrinaire approach, which has really taken hold from the top down of our society, I would say, which says that the only solution to a person who feels this gender dysphoria is to sort of put them on a conveyor belt to hormone therapy and then surgery. But actually, that's very much disputed. There are very many people who will take a different view. Many medical professionals will take a different view. And let's not forget as well that there are lots of people out there who have tried to live out the ideals of the gender ideologues and have suffered as a result of it. And people who have tried living as the opposite sex and often years later have reverted to living in their genuine biological sex, and who feel that trying to live out gender ideology has done them a great deal of damage. And there's nobody really speaking up for those people. Our politicians and our journalists don't seem to be interested in their stories at all. But I think that's a dose of reality that we really need. We need to hear from those people.
How can we as Christians and how can churches be helping people affected by this issue?
Well, that's an excellent question. I mean, I think my experience is that churches I've been involved with and churches I've visited over the years are actually pretty good at welcoming all kinds of people, and not making a fuss when people present with kind of fairly obvious life-controlling issues, but we just welcome them in and love them. And of course, as Christians, we believe that truth is very important, and all of us who've been welcomed into any church have the experience of hearing people speaking the truth in love. And so that is the experience we have had, certainly the experience I had when I converted to Christ in my sort of late teens. And it's the experience that we should hold out, we should hope to offer out to people who struggle with gender dysphoria, that they would come to our church, that they would be welcomed and accepted, but also that they would hear us speak the truth in love.